And how is everybody doing? Alongside Jason Andera, I am Jay Elson. Welcome inside this championship edition of Varsity Sports. Well, the annual celebration of high school football kicking off less than 24 hours from now. We are going to spend the next 30 minutes giving you everything you need to know heading into the weekend, including the key matchups inside the matchups for all 11 of this week's championship games.
And we'll tell you who we are going to pick to try to settle our season-long pick'em contest, which has been very close all year. I have a 3-point lead, but 2 points per win in this last round, so Jay has a chance to catch up.
And we are going to pick all 11 championship games, so stay tuned for that. We'll see who may the best man win, I guess. All right, well, we are going to start our championship previews in South Dakota. We're going to go from smallest class to the largest, and that means we begin in Class 9B. Harding County at 10-1 taking on Langford area. This is the 7th championship game appearance for the Rancers, Jason. They're seeking their 3rd championship. The last came back in 2012. Very different on the other side. Langford making its first ever appearance at the Dakota Dome.
Langford comes in as the higher seed, the undefeated team, but Harding County comes in with the experience, and their strength of their team is their balance. It starts with their quarterback, Scott Podzimic, who has thrown for over 2,000 yards this year. And they've got 4 guys in the backfield who've got at least 300 yards rushing, so they balance that out with a great run. That's going to be huge for them. And for Langford, their strength is their big physical line. They've got Brady Weaker and Jordan Carson, 2 200-plus pound guys who can really move, and that's really freed up some holes for 2 guys in the backfield, Chance Olson and Lincoln Gibbs, both of which are over 1,000 yards on the season. So you've got a big line going against a pass-happy team. In the end, I think the passing wins in the Dome, and I'm going to take Harding County.
I like Harding County as well, and you know, I haven't seen either of these teams in person. They're not particularly close to here, and that makes it difficult for us. But there's something to be said about that championship experience, and I know a lot of these guys weren't a part of that 2012 title team, but at the same time, there's something to be said about coming up in a program that wins a lot, and Harding County wins a lot, and I think that's going to give them the edge in this game. In Class 9A, it's Sully Buttes, 10-1, taking on Canastota, who's 11-0. The Chargers making their first championship game appearance, Jason, since 1990. They were runners-up that year. Canastota, meanwhile, been one of the best for quite a while now. They won 3 straight titles between 2010 and 2012 in both 9B and 9A.
Well, when we compare these two teams, both of them really have the strength on the defense. Sully Butte started the year a little bit disarray on defense, but since then, that's what's gotten them all the way to the Dome. And their quarterback, Scott Zeffner, who hasn't done too bad on his own, hooking up with Cody Nelson in the passing game, so they can pass it a little bit as well. For Canastota, huge advantage on defense. Some real playmakers up front, starting with Xavier Ward and company. They attack teams, only allow 6.4 points per game. Key to victory, though, is for Canastota to shut down that passing game. I think they can with Shea Jolly in that secondary, and I think Canastota gets the win.
I like Canastota as well. I mean, they play such a difficult schedule, and they just ride that defense so well. I mean, they don't give up a lot of anything to anybody, and I don't think Sully Buttes is a team that's going to intimidate them any more than anyone else they've seen at any point this season, and they've managed to get to 11-0 here as they approach this championship game. Finally, in 9AA, Woolsey-Wessington, this might be the best of them all, by the way, 10-1, Woonsocket, Washington Springs, Sanborn Central, 11-0. The Blackhawks beat the Warbirds in the regular season, 20-6 on October 16th. These teams are both appearing in the Dakota Dome for the 2nd straight year. They were in different classes last year, both runners-up in 2014. Woolsey-Wessington losing to Howard in the 9A title game. Woonsocket Washington Springs lost to Gregory in the 9AA title game.
And both of these teams have that Dome experience, which is going to go a long way. Both teams have big power running games. For Woolsey-Wessington, you've got Hunter Johnson for 2,627 yards, rushing this year with 31 touchdowns. On the Woonsocket Washington Springs side, you've got Landon Oshner, who comes in a little hobbled. He has a bummed ankle, but they've got a lot of other weapons and a huge offensive line. And in the end, I think they'll push him around with that line. The senior quarterback, Tucker Kingsbury, and the Blackhawks get it done.
I think they're a little bit more physical. I like Woonsocket Washington Springs, Sanborn Central as well. They proved it in the regular season matchup where they kind of shut down that high-powered attack from Woolsey-Wessington. I think they're going to do it again. Give me the Blackhawks as well.
Should be a good one, though.
All right, well, Madison has reached the 11A championship game for the 3rd straight year, but will the 3rd time be the charm for the Bulldogs? We'll give you our thoughts on that and the 11B title tilt next.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
And welcome back to our championship preview here on Varsity Sports. We move now into the 11-man ranks in South Dakota, starting with Class 11B. And the matchup is Tri-Valley at 7-4, taking on an 11-0 team from Winter. But Jason, these two are pretty familiar with one another. They've actually combined to win 5 of the last 8 11B titles. It's the third time that they will play each other for the state title since 2009. Winter did win the first 2 of those matchups, 12-6 in 2009 and 13-6 in 2012. They've been low-scoring games when these two teams have obviously gone head-to-head. Can we expect that again?
Well, of course we're going to expect that. When you look at the strengths of both of these teams, defense shows up big. And for Tri-Valley especially, they've done a great job defensively with their big line, especially on the corners at the offensive tackles and defensive tackles, just some massive human beings. So that's a strength for them. Key to victory, though, is to make this a high-scoring game. They've scored over 30 points now 3 weeks in a row, and that's when they've been really getting it done. It's going to be awfully hard, though. When you talk about Winter, their strength is their defense. 8 shutouts in 11 games this year, 1.8 points against per game, and that's really tough to play against, especially with a guy like Crockett Krolikowski, who's been absolutely dominant on the defensive side for Winter this year. Now, the key to victory for Winter, they're just going to have to take their time and control the clock against Tri-Valley, not let it become a high-scoring game, and I think they'll be just fine. They've been dominant this year in 11B. However, Mustangs have played a really 11A heavy schedule, so that's what accounts for some of those losses.
You can never judge Tri-Valley at state championship time based on their record because they do play such a difficult schedule. That being said, though, can they continue their run here?
I think it finally ends. I think Winter is just too good. We haven't seen how good they are because of their competition, but they have blown away every expectation. I got to take the Warriors.
We've seen this particular scenario play out in those first 2 matchups. Tri-Valley came in with some losses. Winter came in really one of those dominant teams in the class, and that has won out. The Warriors have won those first 2. I like them to make it 3 straight over Tri-Valley and get the win as well. As we move into Class 11A now, another matchup that we've seen before, West Central and Madison. The Bulldogs did beat the Trojans 28-7 on September 11th. These teams also played for the title in 2013. West Central won that one 28-21 for their 12th state title. Those have all come since 1993. Madison, meanwhile, returning to the Dome, Jason, for the 3rd straight year. They lost to West Central in 2013, lost to Del Rapids last year. Is this the year finally for the Bulldogs? But let's take a look at West Central first.
Well, let's look at West Central. Their strengths and their key to victory. Strength, obviously, is executing their offense, something that West Central does better and better throughout the season, and they are just formulaic in the way they are executing right now. Jonah Rechtenbaugh leading the team with 1,100 yards, 19 touchdowns, but they also have Jordan Luth. They can give the ball 3 games over 100 yards. Key to victory for them is really to limit those turnovers and limit the big plays. And when you talk about big plays, you talk about Madison. This is a team that has playmakers. 4 guys have gone for over 50-yard touchdowns this year. Brody Fredrickson's put in a 98-yard touchdown run. They've got 5 pick-sixes and 2 special teams touchdowns. This is how you make big plays. You play for Madison. So that's the key, obviously, for them. Get off to a fast start, make those big plays. I mean, they've been tied or losing in the second half despite their undefeated record 3 times this year. So they're going to have to get out quick in this one.
Well, do you think West Central's got enough to avenge that? I mean, it was a pretty lopsided game the first time around.
It was 7-7 at one point, but then Madison took over. I think they're more focused. They've been looking at this team the last 3 years and saying, Mitch Hansen's team, when he's a senior, could be pretty good, and I think they'll win.
I like the Bulldogs as well. They are a strong second-half team, and you wonder how long you can continue that, but at the same time and time again, they have risen to the occasion late and made the plays they needed to make down the stretch of games to continue undefeated. I think the Bulldogs do finally get it done this year. All right, well, Sioux Falls and Gorman avenged an earlier loss to Roosevelt by upsetting the Rough Riders in last week's semifinals. Can the Knights do it again against Washington? We'll give you our thoughts on that and Yankton's bid for a 2nd straight 11AA title when we return.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
And welcome back to Varsity Sports. We wrap up our championship previews for South Dakota now with a look at the 2 biggest classes. And let's go to 11AA, Pierre and Yankton, an all-ESD final yet again. Governors, though, did shut out Yankton 31-0 on September 25th. That was just an onslaught, a lot of turnovers for the Bucks in that game. But remember, the Bucks are the team that are the defending champions. They're looking for a 2nd straight 11AA title. Pierre, meanwhile, looking for their second championship since 2013.
Yeah, and we look at strengths, and you look at Pierre, and you talk about one guy, Brevin Kaiser, a guy who's thrown for 1,700 yards. He's rushed for almost 800 yards and has accounted for 23 touchdowns this year. And the way he's played in the last 2 weeks, 9 touchdowns that he's been responsible for, he's pretty tough to beat. Now, the key to victory for them is to keep playing like they have over the last 4 weeks. In the last 4 weeks, their offense has averaged 440 total yards and only given up 260 total yards. That's playoff football, folks. So Pierre wants to keep playing like that. Yankton, on the other hand, their strength is their resiliency. Man, their season has been up and down, and it's headed back up despite losing their quarterback Sawatsky, losing their best receiver Keenan LaCroix, and now Landon Binder is probably out for the championship game. But somehow they've packaged this all together, moving Tanner Frick to running back. The guy has been on fire in the last 4 weeks. Brandon Caskey's run for a couple touchdowns. Sheldon Gant, great on defense. So I think Yankton's resiliency is going to help them in this one. But the key really is turnover battle. I mean, this is where they've had some problems this year. At the quarterback position, Braden Tursa had some interception problems, and even Nate Stevenson has come in, played well, but he's had some turnover problems. So they got to keep turnovers to a minimum.
And remember, the 31-0 loss to Pierre was the first of back-to-back shutout losses for the Bucs. They went 8 whole quarters without scoring a point. Since then, though, boy, things have turned around in a hurry. Arlen Lichtas has them playing well.
It's turned around, but my pick is still going to be with Pierre. I think Pierre has what it takes to be a championship squad. They've got the better quarterback, better playmakers in this one.
Yeah, I think Pierre gets the win here as well. I think that you can only look so far past that game. I know it was all the way back in September, and Yankton didn't do themselves any favors by turning over the ball as much as they did, but Brevin Kaiser is the best player in this class, and he plays the quarterback position. That's so important in these championship game scenarios. So let's go with Pierre as well. Finally, the big one coming up on Saturday night in 11 AAA, O'Gorman at 9-2, Washington at 10-1. Another rematch from the regular season. The Warriors beat the Knights 39-23 on September 18th. Let's take a look at some interesting notes coming into this one, Jason. Sioux Falls schools overall have won 11 straight state titles in the state's biggest class. That's AA and now AAA. And public schools have now won 9 of those, the last 9.
Right.
O'Gorman, remember, won in 2005 and 2006. Warriors looking for number 4 overall. The Knights seeking their first since 2005, but they've got 9 to their credit. There's a lot of pedigree involved in this matchup.
And over the last 2 years, it's been Roosevelt and Lincoln. This year, the other 2 Sioux Falls schools take their place, and I think we'll have just as good a games as we've had over the last couple of years. But let's talk about strengths and keys again. Strengths for the Knights, their backfield. Nobody matches up with the guys they bring in their backfield, starting with Luke Fritsch, who I think really was the difference maker last week against Roosevelt. But Bauer, McQuinja, Cassiello, and Imperi in the passing game. A lot of playmakers on that team. Key for them is really to hold up in the trenches. I mean, not only are they playing 5 guys on both sides of the ball, but they are outmanned up front. They've got to win some battles up front. You talk about the Warriors, we talk about the big guys. Not just Matt Varniak, but the rest of the offensive line has been playing at a very high level. And their defense features a lot of seniors and a lot of guys who have really stepped up throughout this season. But key for them, again, just the opposite. They got to wear down the Knights, a team that plays so many guys both ways. I know the Warriors have a couple guys playing both ways, but the Knights have almost their whole defense playing both ways.
Well, who do you like in this one?
Well, this is really a coin flip for me. I think it's going to come down to 1 or 2 plays, and I think the Warriors will be fresher at the end of the game. I take Washington.
I think that physicality is so important for Washington in this game because, like you said, the Knights play so many guys both ways. They were gassed after that game against Roosevelt. They did make it through.
Roosevelt didn't push the press. They didn't push the pace, and they still were worn out.
I just have trouble believing the Knights are going to be able to hold up 2 games in a row like that. That's an awful big ask physically for that football team. I like the Warriors as well. Coming up, our focus shifts to Fargo and the Dakota Bowl. We'll kick off our previews for all 4 North Dakota title games after this.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
North Dakota will divvy up its 4 state championships for high school football at the Fargo Dome on Friday. They're going to start with the 9-man game just after 9 in the morning.
Right,
that's appropriate. It's in a matchup of undefeated teams, 11-0 North Prairie, 11-0 Richland. The Colts seeking their first state title since 2005. North Prairie does not have one to their credit, Jason. And we don't know a ton about the Cougars.
Well, they kind of play up near Canada, not a lot of television coverage, but what we do know 17 juniors and seniors, so a very experienced team, and it starts up front with them. They've rushed for almost 3,000 yards on the ground, and they've got a very good quarterback to move the ball for them. But the key to victory for them is to win that battle up front. I don't know if anybody has really challenged Richland up front. We know they've got a back that the Cougars haven't seen anybody quite like Jake Eland yet, but I think up front they've got a chance to contain Richland for a little bit. On the other side, the Colts, we know they are a quick strike team. 54 points per game. They have 105 plays this year of 20-plus yards, and they convert over half their third downs. It's a very high-powered offense, and we know that's the strength for them. The key to them is takeaways. Plus 23 on the takeaways this year. Can they force the Cougars and get them out of their rhythm?
Who's your pick to win it?
Well, I think Richland's just been too good. I think they're going to put up some points. Even though they have to go against a good team on defense, I think they're going to put up some points.
Who did they play to get here? Thompson. And then they went Shiloh
Cavalier.
Christian and Cavalier as well.
Before
yeah.
that, yep.
And so, just a ridiculous road for them to even get to this point. I don't see anyone standing up to those other three teams they've already beaten. So I like Richland to get the win as well. 20 minutes after the 9-man game will be the Class 1A game. Killdeer at 9-1. Taking on Park River Fordville Lake. And this is actually the second straight year these teams have met for the title. It's the only potential repeat winner we have in Park River Fordville Lake. And they won 26-18 last year. Killdeer, meanwhile, looking for their first state title since 1995, and that was in Class B.
Oh, well, strengths of Killdeer is blocking. They're the best blocking team in this class. They've got so much physicality, and they're attacking on defense as well. Haven't given up a point in the playoffs yet this year. Only loss, by the way, was the first game of the season. Haven't lost since. The key to them is to win that second half. Last year, they lost the second half in this game. They've got to win in the second half and got to find a way to put up some points. Park River Fordville Lincoln, on the other hand, experience. They've been here before, they've done it, and they've got the better skill set players on their team. The key for them is defense. And this is a team that held Carrington, a team that averaged over 50 points per game, to just one score last week. So the Aggies have got to keep it going on defense if they want to keep up with Killdeer in a very low-scoring game.
Well, who do you like? It's kind of the shoe on the other foot. Well, Killdeer was kind of the favorite coming in last year.
It was, and this could go It could go either way. This is going to be a low-scoring game coming down to a few big plays. I think Levi Cudmore and the Aggies have a few more playmakers. They get the win.
I like the Aggies as well. I'm going to stick with you and say they do get their second straight state championship. All right, well, a pair of WDA rivals are going to square off for North Dakota's big school title on Friday. Minot rolled over Century earlier this season, but the odds of that happening seem awfully slim. We'll take a closer look at this year's AAA championship when we come back.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
And welcome back to Varsity Sports. We've got two more games to preview, two more championship games to preview. Let's look at Class AA in North Dakota. This game coming up 20 minutes after the Class A title game on Friday at the Fargo Dome. Fargo-Shanley 10-1 taking on Beulah 10-1. The Deacons chasing the sixth time in the last 7 years that they have played for a state title. They've got 3 championships, 2 runners-up so far in that span. Beulah, meanwhile, looking for their first state title, believe it or not, since 1989.
Yeah, these are two teams that have played great seasons, great schedules, and earned their way to the Dakota Bowl. But the strength for this Fargo-Shanley team, they are really a mistake-free type of team and win the turnover battles most of the time, which is also going to be a key for this team because Beulah has only turned the ball over 5 times this entire season. So we always say turnovers is a huge key to the game, but huge in this one. And then for the Beulah Miners, they are big. They are experienced, maybe not quite as physical, but they ride their quarterback, Casey Walker, and they will do that again. He's thrown for over 1,400 yards, and then Mikey Morris has chipped in over 1,200 rushing. So a lot of skill guys for this Beulah team. Key for them is to defend the run. They got to find a way to stop Matt Bird, who's rushed for 1,700 yards. So a turnover battle and stopping the run is what this game's going to come down to.
It sounds like you like Beulah a little bit better. Is that accurate?
Oh boy, this is a pretty close one. I do like Beulah a little bit better. I think Casey Walker's a little bit more of a playmaker than what Shanley brings at you with their quarterback, Brevin Lancaster. And sometimes it comes down to quarterback. I'm going to take the Miners.
I think this game's a virtual toss-up. I'm going to go the other direction. I like Shanley. Again, 6 times in 7 years. There's just something about that. When you time and time again figure out how to get yourself into this position. They've won more of these than they've lost.
True.
And in a close game, I'm going to give that edge to experience. I like Fargo Shanley to get the championship. All right, finally, the biggest class, AAA. Bismarck Century 9-2, taking on Minot, who is 10-1. The Magicians beat the Patriots, beat them pretty good, 35-7 on September 18th, but we know a lot has changed since that game, particularly for the Patriots and at the quarterback spot. Minot, just so we know, looking for their first state title since 1980. They were runner-up last year. Century looking for their first state title ever. They've been runner-up 3 times, so either way, we're going to see someone who either hasn't won one or hasn't won one in a very long time.
35 years. So, yeah, you're right. Century, obviously a different team in the last 7 games since Dalton Feeney has come back. The guy has thrown for 15 passing touchdowns, and his arc has come down a little bit, and maybe not quite the rate he was when he first started on the comeback. Teams have assimilated a little bit to Dalton Feeney, but still a very dominant player. So the strength of this team is Dalton Feeney. Their key to victory is really to support that passing game and get that run game going. Now for Minot, I mean, Dalton Feeney didn't play defense, and they really shut down defensively, did a great job on the running game last time they played them. And when the ball's on the other side of the field and Minot has the ball, they put up some big points, 35 points the first time. I think they can do that again, and their strength really comes with their experience and their balance. Nagel and Belinsky and their defense, they are a very well-rounded team. That's why I like Minot in this game.
You like Minot? I like Century. I like what Dalton Feeney's been able to do since he's come back. I think you're right. I think teams have figured him out a little bit. That's what film does.
Yep.
But there's just something about it. And you look at, they got past Bismarck. They got past West Fargo, who arguably is the hottest team overall in the state in the semifinals. It was close, but they did it. I like Century. I think they're going to get their first state title
Flip a coin.
In this game. But either way, no matter what, it's going to be a great weekend of high school football in both North and South Dakota. We're excited. You should be too. And that's going to do it for us for tonight. For Jason Andera, I'm Jay Ellis. Remember, Varsity Sports Live, a championship edition coming up on Friday night. Enjoy the games, everybody. We'll see you back here next week.